YouTube, this is Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to my review series, Sexism in Movies and TV. So there's a whole list of reasons I could make as to why I do this show. In fact, during the Season 8 finale, I made a top 10 list of the double standards that Hollywood has when it comes to gender, or biological sex, whatever you want to call it. And I did make a lot of good points, and there are a ton of other topics. But the biggest and most glaring issue with what I tackle in this series boils down to the word hypocrisy. I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens to characters who are male on mostly American TV are things that would never happen to a female character in a million years. There's no way the FCC or foreign television would ever let that happen. If they did, Tumblr, X, Twitter, whatever social media platform is infested with cancel pigs at the moment, would rip them apart, metaphorically speaking. One reason I have to do this show more or less comes down to one word, and that is validation. Now, there are a ton of characters on TV who would be complete toxic role models for girls. And when it comes to those characters and their massive egos, the show will instantly validate them as opposed to taking a stand with reality and put them in their place the way they would with any male character, even if he's a character who's in the right. And that's kind of something that you don't see on American TV or shows imported from Japan, i.e. anime. Seems like good role models for boys on TV and in films have dwindled, while the number of bad role models for girls has not only gone up, but yeah, I'm just gonna say it. The people who write this schlock will instantly validate their horrid behavior at every point. And it's not just bad behavior. They also have massive egos that these crap shows will instantly bend over to validate as well. And when they're not doing that, they're more or less depriving girls of actual good role models. Instead, most role models for girls are the worst type of brats you can imagine. You know, the kind that would actually hurt their brother over something completely insignificant and minuscule. In recent years, positive role models for boys have fallen by the wayside. replaced by spineless cucks who cannot stand up for themselves and will bend over backwards for a girl, whether she be family or someone he has a crush on, and will more or less be screwed over in the end. And when you look at how these terrible episodes of TV shows and horrible films are written, the show and or film thinks this is okay. It says an awful lot about the jackass who wrote it. We need a men's rights revolution when it comes to the entertainment industry, specifically in film and television, because if we don't, things are going to stay the same. I blame the current state of movies and TV as to why young boys and young men have such low self-esteem. It should be pretty obvious that's why. No good role models equals terrible self-esteem. And those are some really good reasons as to why I do this series. Okay, I needed a topic for this episode, and after I saw the video by L.S. Mark, Glenn Quagmire, A Pervert Without a Purpose, and Mr. Multiverse's video, Can Johnny Bravo Be Saved? Links to both will be in the description. I actually got thinking. The characters of Johnny Bravo and Glenn Quagmire are kind of similar, but it could easily be debated whether or not Johnny Bravo is as bad as Quahog's resident sex fiend here. So, in this video, I'm going to compare Johnny Bravo to Glenn Quagmire for the sole purpose of proving that, yeah, Johnny may or may not be a pervert. That one is completely up in the air. But he is not as bad as Glenn Quagmire. I will admit the bulk of his show was sexist, but he isn't as bad as Glenn Quagmire. And here's why. Okay, so here's how this topic is going to play out. I'm going to compare Cartoon Network's #1 pervert to Family Guy's resident sex fiend in areas such as sincerity and interests to see which of them is sexual abuser, womanizer, sex addict, sex fiend, insult to the male gender as a whole for merely playing on stereotypes, and overall pervert. Okay, well, we know that both Johnny Bravo and Glenn Quagmire are very interested in the opposite sex, but do they have any other interests? Well, outside of seducing women, Johnny Bravo also does karate. He plays both VR games and video games, he's a fan of the show Squid Ringo Kung Fu Guy, as well as the show Clam League 9000, and is a huge fan of martial arts movies. And since he's actually made direct references on his show to other fictional properties, I can only assume that Johnny Bravo knows they exist. I mean, he actually mistook Blue Falcon for Batman, so he knows who Batman is. Now let's see how Glenn Quagmire fares when compared to Johnny Bravo in this field. Well, he plays golf. He has some knowledge of classic video games. Does play other sports outside of golf. He's a pilot and he loves cats, to the point where he made a cat cafe because he wanted people to actually remember him for something else other than trying to seduce women. And pilot is really more of a job and not a hobby. And the whole sports thing, he usually is around Peter and the rest of the guys when he does that. So I can only assume that he wouldn't be doing any of this stuff on his own. Okay, on to part 2, sincerity. Now, it's more than obvious that Johnny Bravo is sincere with his feelings. Well, Quagmire here is not. I mean, for crying out loud, this guy had kidnapped a bunch of Asian women, tagged them like animals, and kept them in trunk of his car. In previous reviews, I've brought up the fact that the reason Johnny Bravo never gets the girl is really due to him having, a massive ego and next to no social skills. If Johnny Bravo were to learn humility and expand his social range out from one friend, his relatives, and the little neighbor girl, then yeah, he would eventually get the girl. Where on the other hand, Glenn Quagmire is by no means sincere. Time and time again, it shows he will do anything to get with a woman, whether it means lying to them or keeping them held hostage. And then there was the time Quagmire lost control of his hormones so badly that he broke into the women's bathroom just to spy on Lois. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. You probably all know what this image is. I really don't think I need to explain it. But the blunt version is, by season 2, Quagmire was already a sex offender. And you can never really say that about Johnny Bravo, because outside of the show being rated Y7, there's the fact that despite his poor social skills, massive ego, and all of his failed attempts to get the girl, he never really well, he never really tried to, say, roofie them. Johnny Bravo may hit on a woman and she'll reject him, but he's okay with that. He never tries to force himself onto his object of affection of any episode. Yes, he will try to pull some stunt to win her over, and it always backfires, but in the end of the day, he always gives her a choice in it. He never really demands that she be with him like Bowser from Super Mario, or, say, roofie her like Glenn Quagmire would do, or keep her locked up in the trunk of his car or his basement, also something Quagmire has done. And since we're on the topic of sincerity, Quagmire is actually less like Johnny Bravo and more like the sensitive male. A character who admits that he's a scam. If you don't remember the premise of that episode, Johnny Bravo meets the sensitive male, then the sensitive male tries to teach Johnny how to get women. It's a Schoolhouse Rock parody, and at the end, when Johnny has emulated this guy, who is better at him than picking up women, despite being 10 times less appealing than Johnny could ever be, the sensitive male realizes that he can't teach Johnny anything unless he directly gives him the secret. And the sensitive male's secret to picking up women, despite being infinitely less appealing than someone like Johnny Bravo or Glenn Quagmire, is to fake it. And the episode boils down to, yes, Johnny's an idiot, but at least he's honest. In fact, when you think about it, Glenn Quagmire and the sensitive male are almost the same character. People would be quick to compare Johnny Bravo to Quagmire, but no, the real comparison is with this guy, as they're both womanizers who will do whatever it takes to get with a woman, and more or less they lie and are completely dishonest in their means of being successful in those pursuits. Not to turn this discussion into a deconstruction of a one-time character, but in reality, the sensitive male would basically be the guy who does get the girl, but he doesn't want a relationship. He just wants a one-night stand and lies to her to get out. Well, and when I say get out, I mean he isn't even in the city he lives in. He would go to another city, have a one-night stand with a woman there, and then tell her some cheesy lie to get out of her home so he can go back to his home in his city and never see her again. Now I want to talk about which one of these so-called Casanovas is the lesser of two evils. While Johnny Bravo may lack the social skills to form an actual relationship. Glenn Quagmire, on the other hand, does not care. He only sees the object of his lust. And I say lust because he rarely wants a relationship. For the most part, he just wants sex and nothing else. Which is really a bad stereotype that I talked about in my pervert trope video. You see, a lot of writers think that Glenn Quagmire is the everyman, and that every man out there is interested in sex and only sex, which I can guarantee you is not even remotely true. That's not the case with Glenn Quagmire. He's a sex offender, a rapist, and has roofied a ton of women. Not to mention that he imprisons them and has a pepper spray immunity and apparently has every STD known to man. Yeah, this is a very toxic and harmful stereotype to apply to half of the population. However, Johnny's just an idiot. The joke of the early seasons, as well as the worst parts of his show, were, here's a guy who looks like he'd have a ton of women chasing him, but he doesn't. Okay, and now it's time to unveil the winner of this clash of characters. And the winner is Johnny Bravo. Was there any doubt? The truth of the matter is, although Quagmire may get the girl, Johnny Bravo is the one who would actually care about her. And, yeah, there have been rumors that his show might come back. And if so, Cartoon Network should more or less, well, steer clear of the main gimmick of Season 1, which was insanely sexist, and focus on what they did in the show's third season, and more or less, well, that's where Johnny Bravo found its footing, with movie parodies. Do more episodes like the Hansel and Gretel Project, Virtual Johnny, The Clueless Kid, and, yeah, a Johnny Bravo revival could work. Because the truth is, despite how sexist the original run of Johnny Bravo was, he was not a rapist. He never roofied anyone. He never dated anyone underage. The closest we got out of that was him going to a dance with little Susie, and that was merely out of social obligation. But yeah, Glenn Quagmire more or less resembles the straw man stereotype of what people say Johnny Bravo is, completely ignoring some of the good episodes, which really more or less amount to movie parodies. People on the internet are always calling Johnny Bravo a misogynist, even though he's not. It more or less takes they're idiots. It does not take one small step for this to equal this. If anything, this guy has more in common with this fraud than he does with this character. And with that said, I'm going to end the video. In this episode, I am going to be making a comparison, essentially to call out hypocrisy. And you're probably wondering, what franchises am I comparing? One of them was a cartoon from 1997, and the other was a Hungarian comic strip from the 1950s. In this episode, I will be comparing Johnny Bravo to the Hungarian comic strip Jusica, because despite what you would believe, these two franchises actually have a lot in common. This cartoon show from the mid to late 90s and this Hungarian comic strip from the 50s actually have a lot in common. Both center around a main character trying to find a romantic partner. Both do not have a very good or a very high opinion of men. You'd think that both would have aged poorly. Johnny Bravo actually aged better than you'd think because of its third season, where they actually went really light on the running gag of Johnny hits on the woman of the episode and she punches his face in, and the show found its strength in movie parodies. Where on the other hand, Jusica is the kind of thing that you would think would have aged insanely poorly because of all of the degenerate behavior within. And the reason that this comic strip has actually gotten popularity in recent years is ironically because of the same exact excuse that the creator gave to essentially avoid the public perception of Jusica being the type of thing you'd see in Playboy magazine. Same logic, this is merely a parody of a degenerate magazine, and this is merely a parody of an over-sexualized mascot. You're dumb enough to think that Jusica is merely a parody of sexism, and you're stupid enough to think that this is secretly performance art and not a degenerate magazine, and definitely stupid enough to think that this woman is just playing the role of the over-sexualized mascot. None of these things are parody, and if you at any point still think that they are, you really are stupid. Paul Pushtai here was definitely able to fool a lot of idiots. A lot of them are on Blue Sky because they left Twitter, and they're on Tumblr, and I really gotta say, they are really stupid if they think Jushika is parody. Because if they believed his excuse for a minute, they really are stupid. And I don't mean stupid, I mean retard stupid. The reason Johnny Bravo never gets the girl is because, well, he is a narcissist. He could actually get the girl, eventually. But first, he would have to overcome one of two flaws. The first being his unbelievable narcissism. He would need to go through some kind of humbling experience where he realizes that the world doesn't revolve around him. And two, he would need to actually build up his social skills. The guy interacts with less than 10 characters on his show on a regular basis. He would need to broaden that. With men, sometimes it's too late to make new friends, but I'm pretty sure there are other things outside friendship, like work, that Johnny could probably make a connection with someone over without becoming friends with the guy. Allowing him to gain a greater understanding of how humans work, and with these flaws gone, he might actually have a shot at getting the girl. For the bulk of the series, most, or in this case the best of Season 3 excluded, Johnny Bravo is kind of a straw man, where on the other hand, Jushika is basically a woman with insane expectations. And not to mention, her strip has a very, very poor opinion of men. In Johnny Bravo, women are kind of put on a pedestal, but with Jushika, every man in these strips is portrayed as a complete pervert, a degenerate, or in the case of this strip, just not good enough. The reason that Jushika is single is because her expectations are way too high, and most of the men around her are complete perverts and simps who she can easily manipulate. One question that is constantly asked on this show is, what if the genders were reversed? Now, I want you to imagine a hypothetical version of Johnny Bravo, where Johnny mostly remains the same, but with a unique twist. Despite the bulk of the women Johnny chases being drop-dead gorgeous, he will find a flaw with every single woman that he dates. Doesn't like Swedish karate movies? Instantly dumped. does not like the idea of smelling like baloney, he dumps her. She turns out to be a criminal, or was just dating him because she would have gotten something out of it. Boom! He instantly leaves her on the side of the road and doesn't come back. And in this hypothetical version, not all of the women that Johnny would interact with would think that he's an idiot or a creep or a slob. They would actually be attracted to the guy, but he would dump each and every one of them because they're not his dream girl. They have a flaw. Something tells me that that version of Johnny Bravo would age 10 times worse than the original version already has. In the Lost Episode story by Dave the Useless, Johnny Bravo, in search of 1997, link to which will be in the description, a Johnny Bravo remake was mentioned for 2018. But this is just a Lost Episode story. It's not real. But just imagine if it was, and, yeah, some of the writers at Warner Brothers, who were, say, ahead of their time, actually, took into consideration that the one joke that around 75% of Johnny Bravo was built on would be really problematic, or maybe some of them were or MRAs in this hypothetical scenario, and got the idea of saying, hey, let's turn this Johnny Bravo remake into a gender-swapped Jushika. In this hypothetical Johnny Bravo remake, yes, the women that Johnny chases would kind of be interested in him, but it would be more along the lines of rumors that Johnny's rich, or can get them a gig on a show that he might be writing for, or directing. In other words, they're allowing themselves to be chased by Johnny Bravo because they want something out of it. And in this case, it would be money for the most part. Idiots on Twitter, now Blue Sky, don't get is that people kind of they search for different things in the opposite gender. Some people, not everyone is the same, but for the most part, a man wants an attractive woman, and a woman wants a man who will bring in finances and monetary stability. The rich guy fetish is a thing, and this hypothetical, not gynocentric Johnny Bravo remake would take full advantage of it. If Family Guy is willing to admit that the rich guy fetish is a thing, I really don't see why something like Johnny Bravo couldn't as well. Okay, I'm just gonna end this review by saying that if you think that this, of all things, is a parody of sexism, then you're an idiot. And if you truly think that Johnny Bravo is a misogynist, you're an even bigger idiot.